Hey there guys, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts discussion number 271, Fluid Optimizations and Gui Style Inspector, and I am joined this week by Flixian.
Hey everyone, missed you guys.
Yeah, I was lonely last week without you. That was mostly my fault. Well, kind of.
That was Mother Nature's fault.
Yeah, that was Mother Nature's fault with the power going out. But yeah, so we're here, and man, this one's exciting. So fluid optimizations, they covered this briefly a bit in a previous Friday Facts, but they talk about it more here, and it's super exciting. So first off, they talk a little bit about Game Developers Session 2018. It'll be taking place next week, running Friday 7th to Saturday the 8th. This year, like last year, we are silver sponsor of the event, which means you will see some Factorial branding around the event and in their official booklet. Part of the preparation on our side was to produce a nice graphical asset for their use, which you can see below, which looks super cool. Now,
Yeah, it looks good. Try not to focus on functionality.
Yeah, it is way not functional. And they even say it's not supposed to make sense. There's a ton of stuff here if you look at it that makes no sense and is not even possible in the game naturally. But like they said, it's not supposed to. They say it's an aesthetic composition to showcase the design and theme of the game and its elements while not necessarily making logical sense. It also contains the first public display of our new official Wooby Software logo down on the right, which I think is really cool how they've done this logo.
Yeah, I like the fact that it looks like wires on the circuit board, and it connects to the chip that is Whoops.
Yeah, exactly. About half the office team here will be attending the event, so if you are also going, you might bump into us. So
sad to say, I'm not going.
Yeah, me neither. That's I assume it's taking place like in Prague or somewhere over there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I don't think I can get there in time.
Yeah, and unless you want to pay like over $1,000 plane ticket.
Yeah, the nice thing about this image, though, you see a lot of the high-res assets in a level of detail that we haven't seen before. Like we can see I think that's the substation, and then there's the big power poles and the medium power poles. They're all in high-res.
Yeah, which looks super, super nice. And stuff. I mean, everything in here, the walls, you can see the new walls as well, and new gates, which are high res. Just looks really, really nice.
This is a nice touch too. I just noticed it, even though my brain registered it the first time I saw the picture. The logistics chests that are just below the Factorio logo, they have matching color inserters.
Oh yeah, that is really nice for sure.
Not that it really means anything. It's just a nice touch, nice color coding there.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to the exciting, super exciting part, fluid optimizations. So they're doing fluid optimizations in 3 stages. The first is move all the fluid logic into a separate system, merge straight sections of pipe into segments, which they talked about this in the previous Friday Facts where they discussed this thing. You can see a link here. And tweak the fluid flow logic, which will not be an optimization, but a gameplay mechanics improvement. So Dominic has just finished stage 1 and has been merged into 17, so let me present what was changed and how it helps. The approach is similar to what we did with transport belts. One of the main things slowing down the simulation is that every entity handling fluid, pipe, assembling machines with fluid connection, refinery, mining drill with fluid connection, pump, offshore pump, etc. has to be kept as updatable, and its update needs to be called every tick just to update the flowing of the internal pipes. So mining drill / assembling machines are being forced to do its logic instead of going to sleep. From the perspective of the optimization, every extra piece of data that needs to get to the CPU cache is like an extra weight you need to carry around. It slows the whole simulation down. The pipe is used just to call the inner update. So
yeah, take a break here. The important part about that is the CPU cache implications. CPU cache is very, very, very fast memory that is right next to the CPU. It's not very big. It's on the order of kilobytes, maybe a megabyte. The largest cache you'll see is a couple megabytes.
Right.
And so the fact that all of these entities needed to be in the CPU cache to do all these calculations every single tick, that was a huge source of slowdown, and it's one of the reasons that as you grow your factory, memory speed is one of the biggest impacts you can have on your UPS.
Right. Yeah. It's really memory speed plays a huge part for sure. So looking at this, they have pipe call, and then pipe, which is 312 bytes, and then update call to fluid box, which is 104 bytes.
Yeah, that's just their abstract representation of the fact that they need to tell the pipe to update, and then the pipe itself tells its fluid box to update.
Right.
And the only purpose of the pipe is to hold fluids, so why do they even need to go through the pipe?
Yeah, exactly. So then the other problem is that the pipe memory is scattered around randomly. So we cut all the fluid boxes from the entities using them and put them in a separate system. We call it the fluid manager. It is storing the fluid boxes like this. So fluid box is stored in continuous piece of memory. So fluid box, fluid box, so on and so forth. All of these, it's just a continuous piece of memory of fluid box, pretty much.
Yeah, and so this optimization here is part of the CPU cache implication. He even says it in the next line. The advantage of having data in continuous memory is mainly the fact that when the CPU is copying data from memory to the cache, it's doing so in chunks. So when updating one thing, the next one's already in the cache. So when they go to update every single fluid box, every single pipe, every single assembly machine that has to handle fluids, they hit this first one, and in doing so, because of the way caching works, the next one was already pulled into the cache because it's in the same block of memory as the first one.
Right. So overall, just a lot smoother, a lot faster, a lot more efficient. And on top of that, modern CPUs are also smart, and they can detect continuous memory access, so they start pre-fetching the subsequent fluid boxes automatically in advance.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. When they prefetch, this is going to get kind of technical on my part, but when the CPU prefetches the next block of memory, it means that when the CPU actually gets to needing to touch that piece of memory, there is no cache miss, which means that it checks to see if it's in the cache and it's not there. And the cache miss causes the CPU to do a second call to check the next level of cache, and so on and so forth until it gets to RAM and actually pulls everything into the cache. If you get rid of cache misses, that's a huge speed up because everything's already in the cache and you can just do the calculation immediately.
Right. Okay, interesting. So yeah, that's pretty important. But it is not that simple, as a fluid box always has neighbors, as the flow is from one fluid box to others, and one of the neighbors can be on the other part of the continuous memory, out of cache, so it is still not perfect. The next step...
Sorry, I'm interrupting here. The fact that all the fluid boxes are contiguous in memory is nice, but it doesn't necessarily mean that adjacent pipes are in the same block of memory. That's the next step here.
Okay, that makes a bit more sense. So the next step was to divide the fluid boxes in something we call a fluid system. A fluid system is basically all the fluid boxes that are connected together. So for example, in this refinery setup, there are 5 fluid box systems, which would basically just be the water, the oil, and then the 3 products out. Because each one of a similar type is connected together.
Right.
And then each of the fluid systems is now its own separate continuous memory of fluid boxes in it. The first advantage of this is that it increases the chance that neighbors of a water pipe are close memory-wise to the original pipe, and the cache data from touching it for update could still be there when it is being touched as a neighbor.
Yeah, that right there is reducing cache misses. Make sure that's already in cache when you need to use it.
Right. But the second advantage is even greater, as the fluid systems are now independent and fluid flow doesn't interfere with anything else in the map. Their update can be completely parallelized without any worries, so we just did that.
Sounds so nonchalant when he says it that way.
So we just implemented it, no problem.
Yeah, you know that thing you guys have been clamoring for months, years? You want us to parallelize the game and have it run on multiple cores? Yeah, we
yeah. Yeah.
At least this part of it, they did it.
Yeah. So the final benchmark on a real fully producing map that uses pipes for production of materials and power nuclear reactors, I was able to see a 6.5 times speed up of only the pipes update. The speed up wasn't so big on less beefy computers. That depends on the CPU cache size, CPU core count, etc. But they were still around 3 times faster. I also expect the speed up to get bigger with bigger factories with more separate fluid systems, and also with future CPUs with more cores. Dominic did
That's
benchmark.
a nice speed up.
Yeah, that is a huge speed up.
That's almost on the order of the optimization we got for belts, right?
Yeah, it's huge. So he did benchmark every step with a real save game on his reasonable i7-4790K and recorded with the following overall performance gains. And there's this graph shows a few unexplained intermediary steps. So
yeah, this Friday Facts, the text didn't go through every single step.
Right. So just a reminder, this is just stage 1 before actually merging straight pipe sections in one fluid box, which should improve things again, even in systems with a lot of branching, as even 2 fluid boxes merged into one should help. In the example of refinery setup above, it seems the fluid box count could be reduced by a factor of 4 or so. That should make the savings big enough to justify the planned 2 times slowdown on future fluid flowing algorithm, as we will probably need 2 phases to make it work good enough. Dominic will have an update on the algorithm and conclusions from the previous discussions in a future Friday Facts.
In a future Factorio Friday Facts, there's 4 Fs there.
Yeah, that one. I don't think there's another Friday Facts out there, but Factorio Friday Facts, yes. Now, this is really great, and something to kind of glean from this, and I saw some discussion on the subreddit about it, is that it looks as if for this particular thing, the fluid sections and the fluid flow optimization and stuff, that this part is multi-threaded, as you mentioned, because they mentioned several times in here the CPU core count, which for pretty much every other part of the game doesn't matter because it will only use 1. But the fact that they mention it here really makes me believe that this can actually utilize all the cores of your CPU, this specific part of the game.
Yes, exactly. The fact that it's parallelized means that it has its own thread to run on, and basically, I don't want to say it has the entire game tick time to do its calculation, but it has most of the game tick just to do its own calculation.
Right. So that's huge. Now, like I said, before you guys all run out and buy Threadrippers or something, this is only for the fluid stuff, which, was a pretty slow part of the game performance-wise, but obviously not the whole game. So
yeah, it's still a pretty hefty chunk of it, but it's by no means the majority of the calculations that need to be done.
Yeah. Now, if they were able to do this with belts, which actually someone asked on the Reddit, and I think it was Clonin or our seeding responded and said they'd have to look at a few edge cases that may make it not work, but that this could actually theoretically be done with belts as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So if they could do this with belts or bots or other parts of the game to make more of it parallelized and multi-threaded, that would be huge. Because then your core numbers would actually be really impactful.
Yeah, this is the first, at least the first one that I've seen, the first hint at the fact that this could become a multi-threaded application.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's already multi-threaded. I'm sure the UI is on a different thread than the game calculations, but still, having these calculations be on at least 2 threads now, that's.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I kind of touched on it earlier, but I really want to drive home how important the cache miss thing is. The analogy that I like to use is a library. Let's say you, Xterminator, you're in a library and you're gathering information for something. You're sitting at a table in the library. You have a book open in front of you, and the page that you're on is the actual memory of the CPU.
Okay.
So all that information is in the CPU itself. The books on your table that you're not using, that's in the first level cache. The books that are in the library, that's the next level cache. The books that are at the library down the street, that's the next level cache above that. And the books that are in a library across the country, that's in RAM. That's just an estimate or like an analogy for how long it's going to take you to get that information if you were to walk.
Jeez. That's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, the time scales up exponentially as you get farther and farther away from the CPU. So if a library across the country contains the information that would be in RAM, a library on the other side of the world, at least, contains the information that's on disk.
Right.
And so that's why things are so slow to load the first time. But then once it's in cache, once it's in RAM, it is so much faster than it was before just to read the same information. And that's part of why memory bandwidth, memory speed, is so important for this game, because it's constantly bringing things into and out of the cache. And the more they can optimize that, the faster the calculation can be. Because the calculation itself is very quick. Most of the time is spent waiting for the data to get to the cache.
Right. Interesting. That's a pretty crazy analogy. I never would have thought it was
it's
huge.
It really is that huge. The closer you get to the CPU, the faster the memory is, but the more expensive it becomes too.
Okay. So that takes care of that. So this is really good news. So the Gui Style Inspector. So the implementation of several GUI redesigns is in progress, as they've mentioned. It's being done by several team members, but by adding more team members, they realize that having to coordinate between those people brings new problems. What a surprise. So they started to mess. We started to have to mess in styles. Everyone was inventing their own styles for the GUI to be same as the graphical mockups given by the graphics department. After some discussions on how to solve it, they realized that we mainly need some common language with the graphical department when it comes to the style hierarchy names. For that, we need everyone to be able to quickly inspect which styles are used where and what is the hierarchy. For that reason, we made the Gui Style Inspector. By pressing a key, Control F6, by default, every UI element will show a tooltip with information about the widget and its style, and we'll highlight the widget as well. We wanted to use this. We wanted to use it only internally first, but we decided that if it shows some info for the GUI created by scripts mods like name and type, it may also be useful for mod writers to be able to quickly inspect what's going on, which I think is definitely true. So this is really cool. This should help modders quite a bit, I would imagine.
Yeah, this is all useful information. And to me, this actually kind of reads like a style sheet, like CSS.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's useful. CSS is basically how you get things to look the way you want. So if we have CSS for all the GUIs in the game.
Yeah, that would be, yeah, exactly. So they even use colors to help them navigate. Red, the value was needlessly redefined. Green, the style value that is being used. White, a style value that is not used, that is overwritten by a descendant style. So the tool immediately became very useful and has already helped us to clean up the mess and should improve the work efficiency when it comes to further GUI implementations. The main reaction when I showed this to the rest of the team was, why didn't we have this earlier? Well, better late than never. I feel like this question is very relevant for a lot of the game. Why didn't we have this earlier?
Yeah, it seems like usually the answer is, well, we didn't think of it before. So
Yeah, exactly. This also means that we are showing quite a lot about how the GUI style is organized to the player, so we need to be extra careful about making it tidy to avoid bug reports about the weird mess in styles.
yeah, I'm familiar with those kind of bug reports.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, so there you go, guys. Some cool stuff. The post is really cool. The fluid optimizations are huge. And now, one last thing I want to touch on with the fluid optimizations is nuclear. Someone was like, I think it was on the Reddit, they're like, like nuclear is back on the table, guys. And it is to a degree. However, our seeding replied to it and confirmed that these optimizations do not affect heat pipes whatsoever because they are a different calculation than fluid calculations. I'm not sure like how heavy on performance heat pipes are, but unless they optimize those two, um, you're not going to get like a complete, like huge gain. I mean, you're going to get a gain from the water pipes and fluid boxes within the machines, but all the heat pipes are not being optimized by this.
Yeah, heat pipes work similarly to fluids, but they are not the same system, and they have to be optimized separately.
Right. So hopefully they do that too. Even if they don't, I mean, this will certainly help because, all the normal pipes have fluid boxes, obviously, but then even, I believe, like the turbines and heat exchangers all have fluid boxes because, they have to contain fluid in them.
And tanks, too.
Tanks, yep. So.
And fluid wagons. There's a whole bunch of stuff that uses fluids. All of them were touched with this one.
Yep. So I think that's it. Unless you have any last thoughts.
Another thing our seeding pointed out is this still won't make nuclear as good as solar because solar is literally a single calculation.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, nothing's ever going to be as good as solar.
Yeah, solar is as optimized as anything can get in this game because it's literally how many solar panels do you have? 60 watts or 60 kilowatts times that number of solar panels. That's how much power you can.
Yeah, like it's basically non-existent in terms of performance.
Yeah, so nothing can ever beat solar, but eventually something maybe could match.
Maybe. Oh, I doubt it. But even so, this is still huge. If you're set on your nuclear power or your steam power, this should still give you pretty large performance gains.
Yeah, I like using nuclear myself. I'm happy about this.
Yeah, it's a lot more interesting than solar for sure. Yeah, I think that's going to do it, guys. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Leave any thoughts and such below. And until next week, we will see you later.